Apparently, the professor's spies had caught her speaking to her boyfriend and told Professor Colin about it. Upon her arrival the next day, he had the boys punish her by sitting on her back. All of them spent 5 minutes each sitting on her back. Hello there. My name is Ethan, and I'm currently aged 32. Some years back, I experienced the fall of a toxic professor. After high school, I was in quite a fix as I got accepted by the 2 college institutions I applied at. I talked to a cousin who was in one of the colleges, and he advised me to pick the second, as the one he was attending wasn't as good as the second, according to things he'd heard. Following his advice, I picked the second one, but that decision turned out to be the worst I've ever made, even after years had passed. On my first day, I noticed how the students in my department were always quiet and observing. I was used to being loud and conversing with people, but no one spoke until they were out of the school. I'd concluded that there was probably a school rule that refused the students to speak within the school's building. It sounded odd, but I made myself believe that. However, that belief was changed the next week. After close watch, I discovered that students in the other departments were completely different from the ones in my department. They were more playful and friendly. I didn't waste any time befriending them, since I considered the ones in my department dull and unfriendly. However, the other students revealed shocking news to me. Apparently, there was a professor who was a huge bully and also toxic with the students in my department. No one except them and the students in my department knew about his behavior. Why has no one reported him? I asked them.
Well, he's the hidden son of the president of the school. He told us that himself. If anyone tries to report him, he told us himself that he's going to ensure the person gets expelled.
And he wasn't joking, he's so scary.
I did understand them. It's going to be so hard trying to go against the school's authorities. Hearing how the man was, I knew he'd be dangerous. Matter of fact, he could create fake evidence against any student who tried to report him. For 2 weeks, I didn't meet him. According to the students from the other department, he was on an important task. Now, I was even more shocked. Why were the students in my department being so obedient to his rules when he wasn't even present? I decided to speak to some of them. They never spoke to each other. Even while outside the school, the only time I caught a few speaking was on their phones. The few ones I approached seemed scared to speak to me. No matter how many times I tried to speak to them, they were like zombies. I returned to my friends in the other department and told them about it.
Well, they're all traumatized by his actions. Their self-esteem is at its lowest. He made them like that.
Hearing that, I was even more curious to experience him. I was eager for his return to the school. I needed to experience him to know how he could manipulate nearly 60 students to be scared of him even in his absence. My wish was granted 3 days later, as Professor Colin returned to the school. That day, I had quite a lot to do at home. So, I ended up arriving at school a few minutes late. You must be new, so I suppose you do not know my rules. You must never arrive at this class after me. That's one of my rules. I'm sorry, but I read the rule book on my first day. There wasn't anywhere that it was stated about any professor having his own rules. As I said that, the whole class shockingly turned their eyes to me. I could feel their gazes on me, and it sort of encouraged me to be bold. Professor Colin got closer to me until he was right in front of me. The man was quite tall, making me small before him. I was scared, but I managed to maintain being bold. How dare a little brat like you talk back to me? Are you crazy? Not at all, sir. I'm neither a brat nor crazy. The rule book is against teachers having their rules, so I think you're wrong for going against it. Please, excuse me. I'll go take my seat now. I could see how shocked he was before I walked away, including the students. It was as though I'd done something which no one dared to do. Practically, I did, and that led to the beginning of my suffering. That day, I got to know that he had special students who obeyed him to the core. I knew from my seat partner. According to her, when Professor Colin first joined the school, they were reluctant in obeying his strange rules. What are his rules? I was forced to ask. I needed to know all of his so-called rules. When I was told, I nearly screamed out of shock. The students weren't allowed to say a word whenever he was present, and they had to be mindful of their actions when he was absent. I learned that he was obsessed with making them look more perfect than other students of the various departments. He ensured they stopped being friends with others and looked clean always. It would have been quite endurable if he stopped there, but he had some students spy on them after school hours, and those students became his favorite. The school authorities were unaware of the fact about him beating the students at the slightest provocation. Whenever his favorite students gave him news about a student speaking to friends outside school hours, he would punish them intensely and hit them. I asked why they couldn't tell their parents, and I was told about a student who tried it once but got expelled by the school authorities. Apparently, the professor's spies had caught her speaking to her boyfriend and told Professor Colin about it. Upon her arrival the next day, he had the boys punish her by sitting on her back. All of them spent 5 minutes each sitting on her back. That was cruel. The girl's parents and her visited the school the next day, but Professor Colin and his spies swore, and went to the extent of crying, that the student was telling lies. Since there wasn't any evidence that her words were true, and none of them could confirm her truth because the professor had threatened to punish any student who did that, the girl was expelled on the ground that she tried to destroy a teacher's image. The school held their teachers very delicately, so any slander against them wasn't tolerated. They were pained that the girl had to leave, but they weren't about to risk the possibility of being in her situation if they spoke. I thought that was all, but there was still more. I got to know about an accident that led to a boy's right elbow getting destroyed forever. He'd attempted to fight back as Professor Colin was hitting him, but his spies stepped in, and they all gathered the boy, hitting him mercilessly until his elbow broke. The students had thought Professor Colin wouldn't get away with it, but they were presented with a twist. One of Professor Colin's spies stepped out and lied that he and the boy had both been involved in a fight that afternoon. According to him, the boy had intentionally mocked his status as an orphan and also bullied him non-stop for 2 weeks. That day, after the boy slapped him twice for no reason, he told them his anger took control of him and he fought back. The boy burst into tears, telling the school's president that he was sensitive when it came to his parents, and the boy knew, but he kept using it against him to cause a trigger. While he was at it, Professor Colin brought in 2 other spies who attested to the fact that their fellow spy was being truthful. With all that evidence against him, and with even more confirming words from Professor Colin, the school believed them. The spy who stepped up was punished by being made to clean the school for 3 days straight, while the true victim was suspended for 2 months. By the time he returned, he'd missed a lot, which took a huge toll on his results. All of those made the students even more scared of Professor Colin, and also believed that he was truly the hidden son of the school's president. I wasn't ready to sit back and allow that to continue. The students were going through a lot, psychologically, and it was even worse to know that they were being watched outside the school too. His spies were put ahead of every brilliant student in the department. All 5 of his spies occupied the first 5 positions, while others came behind them. The boys weren't intelligent. Professor Colin gave them the answers to his questions, and that way, they always passed. As a result, the true brilliant ones were made to have average results, no matter how hard they worked. For the first session of the year, I was among the top 20, something that had never happened. I was a brilliant student and hardly ever failed my exams, so it was quite shocking seeing my results. I refused to let Professor Colin's toxicity continue. Once when he was absent and his spies were away for lunch, I gathered a few students and told them we needed to speak up. They were exhausted themselves, and a few agreed to join me. Firstly, I planned for us to confront Professor Colin. While we did, 2 students were going to secretly record everything. With the recording, we were going to prove to the school's president that his son was killing the students mentally. On D-Day, while Professor Colin was speaking, I stood up and requested his attention. He turned and cast me a death glare. "How dare you, an unfortunate student who can never amount to anything in his society, disturb my class?" The 2 students were recording. One was using an audio recorder, and another was secretly using her phone. "It's a very important question, sir. I don't understand what this is about. You always give lengthy questions to us, but teach us so little." "Well, stupid, I do not give a damn about any of you understanding what I teach. I do not care about any of you except my boys. Is that clear? Now sit your ass down." I refused, as politely as possible, and insisted that he explained what he was teaching. That angered him, and he asked his spies to bring me out. They handled me carelessly and beat me up in front of all the students. I sacrificed that just to get evidence of his abuse. I dare you to report me. I'm the president's son. If you dare, my father's not going to only expel you, but also make it impossible for another college to accept you. Try me. I had to miss school for 2 days to get treatment. Upon my return on the third day, we marched to the president's office and told him everything, including the videos and audio. He was shocked. According to him, Professor Colin wasn't his son. They weren't even related. He called the other students, and after watching the video and hearing his assurance that he wasn't Professor Colin's father, they revealed all of his atrocities to the man. Immediately, the president called the cops. Before they arrived, all students and staff members were gathered at the school hall. The video was played to all, and Professor Colin's behavior was revealed, alongside his fake identity about being the president's son. Before he could make a move, the police arrived. In front of the whole school, Professor Colin was arrested and taken away. It didn't end there. His spies were all expelled from the school after being made to apologize to the whole school for their dirty behaviors to their fellow students. The president also ensured they were never accepted into any other college. Professor Colin, on the other hand, was made to serve 15 years in prison for physical abuse, emotional abuse, and stalking. After investigation, it was revealed that he also stalked teachers for no reason. The man was a psycho. His bank account was emptied, and his house was sold. The money was given to every student in his department as compensation, and the school funded their therapy sessions, as Professor Collins had mentally destroyed them. It's been years, and the last time I heard about Professor Colin, he was given extra 10 years after it was discovered that he stole from the school to buy his house, and also sold some school properties which were left in his care. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.